report and the 6 recommendations, and the 6 recommendations don't actually have any formal SMART goals with them. So who's actually SMART goals, who's actually responsible, and a time frame? So if you're asking the Indian Army to leave Kashmir, you've not actually stated how long that needs to take. So you've made like some very good recommendations, but they are without foundation. They don't actually say who's responsible, who's accountable, who's actually going to take some action should the Indian Army not leave Kashmir. I mean, you didn't even get you didn't get any response for you to visit on the other side of the Kashmir border into India. So what are the chances of India actually following any of those recommendations that you made? It's a very, very softly approach.
Well, there is an important principle about parliamentarians from across the political parties in the UK asserting what we believe not only to be an analysis of the situation on the ground, but also our hopes for how perhaps a more peaceful outcome might develop. And as we set out in our report, we think that there are a certain number of steps that need to be taken. Now, you're correctly pointing out, well, who's going to do that? And obviously the answer is we need the Indian administration, but also the Pakistan administration in particular, to have a level of dialogue that doesn't exist right now. And so my hope, as I set out in the report, is perhaps after we get past the Indian election period in the springtime in 2019, because that will obviously have a lot of conflict and heat within that election period. When we get to a more calmer situation on the other side of elections, that is probably the environment where a better dialogue can take place. And it was really making sure that the British parliamentary voice would be ready at that point in time to say now is the moment for some confidence building measures, some of which are already there, but in a very, very thin level, to be built upon and to be developed.
Confidence building measures, it's a very softly approach again. What we need is some hard action in Kashmir, and there should be some action in terms of if India fails to even respond to any of your messages, what are the chances of them even following those recommendations? So it comes to kind of like zero. So if there had been any might being put into that report to say, well, either we will sanction trade agreements or India will be prevented from certain Brexit opportunities, surely that would have had much weight. Why was that not added in the report?
Well, I mean, I think in order to get to an outcome which we feel is more positive, you have to have both carrots and sticks in any negotiation. Clearly, we've been quite unequivocal about how unacceptable it is to have legislation in place which is oppressive and which takes away the liberties of the people, particularly on the Indian ministered side of Kashmir, and we've called for those laws to be repealed. In the British Parliament we have very few levers, but those that we do have, either through trade or dialogue, through diplomatic contact, they're the ones that have to be exerted, and we will continue.